OK, well, let's go to our other top story today, that developing story outside of Nairobi. Let's talk to the UN resident coordinator in Kenya, Siddharth Chatterjee, who joins me now from the Kenyan capital. Siddharth, thanks so much for joining us and talking to us this morning. This is a city, a country that is always on high alert, and yet here we are, Kenyans waking up. It's dawn there in Nairobi, Kenyans waking up to yet another tragic attack on their capital.
Very sadly so, and the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has expressed his deepest condolences with the government and the people of Kenya. But what I do want to point out is that Kenya has once again demonstrated an incredible resilience, an incredible poise in the face of adversity, and such a horrific and dastardly attack is utterly unacceptable. But what the Kenyans have shown and their security forces have shown that they were not just up to the task, but their work was meritorious on all counts. We hope we will pass through this phase too and collectively move forward. The United Nations family here in Kenya and the UN country team are completely in lockstep with the government and the people in Kenya in order to not just deal with the scourge of violent extremism, but as well as see how we can advance the whole development agenda that we are committed to. Over to you.
We'll talk about the security response in a while, but let's talk about how Kenyans themselves have reacted. The footage coming out, there seems to be a lot of resilient people there. Only a couple of hours ago, about 50 of them were taken out of that Grosvenor building in that complex. What is the mood like in Kenya this morning?
Kimberly, that's what I'm saying, that Kenyans have shown a stoicism and a resolve which I must say is exceptional on all counts. Here is a people that have united in the way they have kind of responded to this. You could have seen the footage yesterday of Kenyans helping each other, people helping each other. It crossed nationalities, it crossed races, it crossed tribes, and it all unified the country together. I really believe that what Kenya has demonstrated over the last 24 hours is exceptional courage, resolve. And ever since that event happened, I just think that Kenya once again is showing to the world that here is a country that weathers a storm, but weathers it with dignity and poise.
Was this an attack that went beyond borders in terms of who it affected, in terms of how they reacted? What's the makeup like of the general public in Kenya? You have a big headquarters there in a different suburb, but what is it like, the makeup of the general public there?
Well, the general public is representative of the entire world. Kenya is a place where close to 70 multinational corporations have their regional headquarters. It's got 2 United Nations headquarters, the United Nations Environmental Programme, as well as UN Habitat, besides the UN country team, which is composed of 23 UN agencies. It's diverse, it's multinational, it's multicultural. So regardless that these events happen, which is not exceptional to Kenya, we have seen the scourge of terror attacks all across the world. I think what Kenya has managed to do is actually ward off many of these attacks in the past. And if you've seen, we've had a fair amount of peace and stability and security that continues to remain in place. Events like this are just exceptional and are outliers and do not reflect the overall security situation and the stability of Kenya.
Let's talk specifically about the response. 2013, there was an attack, Al-Shabaab again, on the Westgate shopping mall. Let's look at what happened yesterday within the context of what happened at Westgate, because there was a lot of debate, a lot of criticism about specifically the chain of command on the ground at the Westgate attack. You're a former Special Forces veteran. You were in the Indian Armed Forces. Looking at what happened yesterday, do you think that a lesson was learnt from Westgate?
All I would say is that yesterday, the Kenyan security forces, the Kenyan leadership, right up to the highest level, which includes President Kenyatta, demonstrated an absolute grasp and hold of the situation. The speed with which the security forces have responded is meritorious on all counts. I believe yesterday the security forces of Kenya have actually taught many other security forces in the world a lesson about how their soldiers, regardless of the threat that they were posed with, were standing in front of the civilians, protecting them and getting them out of harm's way. I would give them an A+ on that.
Now, Al-Shabaab have claimed this attack. let's talk about extremism. It's not new to Kenya. It's not new to the world. What does the international community need to do to combat this?
This is a global problem that needs a global solution. I commend Kenya actually for their entire strategy on the prevention of violent extremism and counterterrorism. It's an all-inclusive, multi-dimensional strategy which is led by a gentleman by the name of Ambassador Martin Kimani, who happens to be President Kenyatta's special envoy on countering terrorism. What we have seen is the way Kenya has actually managed to deal with the scourge of violent extremism. Take the example of the Kenya-Ethiopia cross-border program. We've actually seen a de-escalation on the number of young people in the bordering town of Moyale that have been joining Al-Shabaab. We've seen overall stability there. So what we are looking at as the UN family, working with the government of Kenya, is to look at some of the drivers of violent extremism as well. And that's one thing that is completely ensconced in our United Nations Development Assistance Framework with Kenya from 2018 to 2022. The most important thing is we have to deal with issues that are also the underlying drivers. There is a security aspect, but as the UN Secretary General says, we have to look at prevention in its entirety. We need to look at the multidimensional causes and have a multidimensional response to it. I believe what Kenya has as an overall strategy is robust. We as the UN family intend to walk this journey with them all the way to the end.
Okay, Siddharth Chatterjee, the UN Resident Coordinator for Kenya. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you very much.